Good afternoon, everyone. We had a very rich morning, and well, we're lagging behind a little bit. It's just half an hour. I think it's acceptable. I had prepared a very short presentation, but well, let's first recap. Actually, this morning we first addressed the scientific foundations of the impact of non-linear phenomena. Actually, what Matteo Zampieri said was very interesting about non-linearity. Non-linearity and non-predictability. We also considered some very practical technological solutions that can be applied to the mountains as well. So in my opinion, it's been an excellent overview of both issues and solutions. Well, this afternoon we're going to take a different angle, and we'll give the floor to the various mountain actors. And Enrico De Girolamo manages a hydroelectric power company well known to everyone, and Mr. Fournier, who has a huge experience. I'm sure you all know him. He has a huge experience of cable cars. So in addition to local actors, it's interesting to extend the discussion outside the Aosta Valley. So I involved two international colleagues, one from Norway, Avardegang Sass, who speak from a Norwegian site called Ringebu that hosted the Winter Olympic Games in 1994. Well, there are both similarities and differences with the Aosta Valley. They are closer to the sea, and of course, latitude is completely different. So we'll listen to a presentation of a different area, and then we'll have one from the States. Torre Udall, one of the founding members and the managers of Protecta Winter. I mean, it's a think tank that sees the mountains as a treasure to be preserved. Very rich in terms of quality of life, but also in terms of business opportunities. Well, this perspective is gaining ground in Europe too, not just in the States. So it's a good idea to really extend our connections, our relations to create a network, and we're not starting from scratch. But more networking among the various actors and for different regions, the so-called third pole, the high mountain regions, based on similarities. Networking for shared solutions. This is one of the goals of the afternoon. This afternoon, we'll listen to the actors of mountain areas. You can see the sequence. We start with Mr. De Girolamo, General Director of C.V.A. I think many of you know him. He certainly plays a key role in the local economy here in the Aosta Valley, also in terms of energy sustainability. Hydroelectric power is one of the most interesting renewable energy sources, and it's certainly more easy to control compared to solar energy, with a number of advantages. And Enrico's presentation certainly looks at resilience, at the resilience of this area at this time of transition, and in the face of climate change that, of course, may heavily affect the mountains, considering the watersheds that they use. Based on the slides I've seen, I'm sure, I think he'll, let's say, submit or present some elements, drivers for optimism. Thank you very much. The first part of my presentation, of course, will be devoted to an introduction of C.V.A, of the C.V.A group. I know it's going to be a repetition for the inhabitants, let's say, the members of the audience living here. I'll also describe our business plan and then focus on climate challenges in our region, as well as the hydroelectric power generation. And there'll also be some criticism about the current Italian legislation, so as to keep you, let's say, well alert after lunch. So let's begin with an overview of the C.V.A group. Well, we define ourselves, we've always defined ourselves as a group based on renewable energy. 20 years ago, the Aosta Valley acquired the hydroelectric power plants of Enel, and hence the growing of knowledge about it. So that started in 1999, when thanks to the Bersani law, the energy sources were liberalized, whereas up to 1992 it was monopolized by the state company that was turned into a joint stock company first, leading then to the current situation. So what are our assets? We are the fourth or fifth hydroelectric power producer in Italy. We have 32 power plants with a power of 1 gigawatt. And according to the various years, we produce from 2.7 and 2.9 gigawatt of electric power. At the moment, we also have 8 wind parks, especially in southern Italy, which is more windy, with 160 megawatt of power and 322 million of kilowatt hours produced every year. We also have 3 solar systems, the largest in Alessandria and Valenza, with 12.5 megawatt of power and 17 million kilowatt hours produced every year. Hydroelectric power. Well, these are actual infrastructures, hydroelectric infrastructures. We have 6 large dams with a capacity of 129 cubic meters of water. The largest is the Place Moulin Dam with 95 million. We own and manage 210 kilometers of canal connecting the pipelines and 50 kilometers of pipelines transferring the water from the canals to the 32 electric power plants. Some figures: we've just approved financial statement for 2021, 710 million euros, EBITDA 193, and net profit after taxes 132 million. Well, this is important if we consider the dividends paid to our only partner, Aosta, and considering the tax impact 90%, let's say, of the capital remains in the Aosta Valley. And the, let's say, licenses that we pay, 36 million euros, well, means 152 million euros as, let's say, the amount going to the community. Last year, it was 92 million euros. Clearly, there's an impact also by the cost of energy, but also by the ability to manage the hydroelectric power plants, as well as the energy shock. There are so many companies like us that have closed their accounts in the red. So you may easily run into trouble, and indeed many European companies have gone bankrupt. So we've always defined ourselves as a renewable company, and we also want to be a community company. Our sustainability budget is now 4 years old. We've issued our first bond in the non-regulated market of Dublin. Well, we heard about taxonomy before, and it's an important definition, since all the funding through large companies is based on sustainability. And so if you don't agree on what sustainability means, so taxonomy is the set of regulations defining sustainability. And so, of course, there's an important stake there, and important countries like France that, of course, would like to include nuclear power plants in the taxonomy, as well as gas used efficiently. Of course, we don't want the system to lose credibility, and that's why we try to play our part with the various association of stakeholders. The first step is interacting with our stakeholders. This is the so-called materiality matrix with the main topics, C.V.A. On the one hand, C.V.A. drivers on the one hand, and the stakeholders drivers too. So in the blue area, you can see the most important challenge defined and shared by both. That will be, of course, reported in the accounts and monitored. And climate change is considered to be the most important one. Some figures from our sustainability budget: 2.8 billion kilowatts produced, meeting the needs of 1 million households, 85,000 customers served. In 21, the economic value generated and distributed is 639 million euros. And the tons of CO2, let's say, prevented, avoided through our systems is almost 900,000. And we also monitor other KPIs, 180,000 work hours for investments and maintenance, 7,000 hours of training for safety, 82 charging columns in the area. We have 623 employees, and that includes distribution through S.p.A, and 80 million euros invested in electromechanic and civil engineering in the past 3 years for the revampings and for keeping our systems efficient. So what is our most important commitment? Well, as this picture shows, of course, we were very concerned with the COVID in the past 2 years. Then subsequently, of course, we had to address recession, and now, well, apparently it seems to get better, but climate change is, of course, going to be the real challenge for the years to come, as we heard this morning. And there were very authoritative speakers emphasizing it already. Since we also want to be a community company, we want to be very close to our territory. And we embraced the Aosta Valley region carbon fuel-free goal, and we are collaborating with the various institutions to reach this goal. Let me just mention a few subjects.
As from these more general objectives, we drew up an integrated strategic plan. It's a 5-year plan with an outlook that goes up to 2029, which is the end of our concession. Now, this industrial plan was redefined in an integrated manner, combining the typical objectives of the company to sustainability. So it is a matrix here because we think that it is increasingly important that companies should not only define themselves in terms of financial objectives, but also in terms of sustainability, partly because of law, partly because of business. Sustainability doesn't only mean investing, but also it is business. What are the 6 major objectives of our integrated strategic plan for 2026? Here you can see the objectives and the sustainability balance. Now, we have strengthening our approach as far as our hydroelectric power stations are concerned, production from renewable energy as well as the hydroelectric distribution, and also increasing our network and distribution network, open innovation, and then marketing and business. These match the 3 macro objectives in terms of sustainability, which is not only zero impact, but in fact a positive one. So starting with a renewable one, which is a positive objective, positive impact, future-proof objectives, increasing the resilience of all our facilities, and then empowering communities. That is to say, training, but not just training, but also the community as a whole, the students who are the new generations, who are the future of our society. Here you can see the various objectives are relisted, so I'm just going on. In terms of operations and hydroelectric, we are strengthening our engineering facilities to relaunch the various facilities. Hydroelectric facilities in Italy are usually 50 plus. They were created when electricity meant hydroelectric energy here, and when industries were settling close to the mountain areas, because that was where there was availability of hydroelectric energy. There are possibilities to revamp this, which may have a fallout on industry and businesses, but also of safety for the area. And then there's also the will to strengthen our work as far as the asset management is concerned and finding alternative energy sources. I was talking about possible revamping. Here I'm going to give two cases in point. And I was also adding that many of the hydroelectric plants had been created to satisfy industry. So there is possibility to better use the available water, so improving production with the same amount of water. This is possible, but there are some legal problems that are blocking about 10 billion worth of investments in Italy. That's a paradox. So we decided as C.V.A to launch two major revamping projects, that is to say Chavon and Home 2, 10 million investment, renewable sources with an increase of 225 gigawatts per hour, and here you can see it. Here you see the list of our plants listed with the gray bars. The blue ones tell us, although we still have to maintain within the legal framework, say by how much could the energy increase. So two revamping and 225 million worth investment, we would have an increase of 70,000 photovoltaic systems. I don't even know if there are as many houses. So you can imagine the difficulty in making them with a cost that is definitely lower, because the average photovoltaic cost is much higher than the 225 million. It'll probably be to 300 to 400 million. So you can appreciate how very targeted actions on existing assets can improve both the safety and environmental impact, and results are very good. When I say safety, it's because here we could replace the pipelines which are halfway up the mountain and which is to have been affected by climate and by movements, and that were built at a time when those areas were not highly populated. So at the end of the work, we will have them in galleries, they'll be safer, and the performance will be better. So unquestionably, two very important examples of revamping. The other important point is to diversify. Diversification is an added value, and for us it's essential because we've seen climate change, and therefore diversification by source, so sun and wind is essential, but also in terms of the changing legislation. The concession is about to go up, we won't have a license, and we have to produce 400 megawatts of new plants, especially wind ones, 396 to be exact, with a reduction of CO2, which is 223,000 tons. Energy efficiency in the past few years, we've also entered that market, which is the other pillar, important pillar that has been launched by Europe in terms of being carbon free, because the greenest kilowatt is the one that was never used. So here you see this is refers to the law where the state covers 110%, and you see their investments, about 113 million. And we are currently also starting off with the various projects. I think the first one will be in June, tri-generation electricity, thermal and cold, also for industry plants. Now, another important point is increasing the potential of the distribution. We distribute for the entire Aosta Valley, over 4,500 kilometers of wires and networks, and they have to be, the networks were built many years ago for various needs and very different criteria and needs. So now with electrification, which Massimo was talking about before, to electric mobility, the peaks of requests are incredible. We also have to reduce the environmental impact as far as possible, putting the lines underground, and where possible, having second generation meters, which will make it possible to transmit data that will be used to add it, to give an added value in real time. Yet another point is our commercial or marketing plan. We hope that we can move most of the fixed rate customers to the free market, but that's not a topic we're discussing today. And last but not least, open innovation. That is to say, we have to be careful, monitor innovation. For years now, we've been monitoring a project, and currently we are focusing on 4 aspects. So one is local energy communities, microgrids and smart grids. And then there's legislation underway where you can go to a up to 1 megawatt for the primary cabins, and we're waiting for the decree to implement it. And we're also going to move on to collective approaches. So storage, we've had with the Turin Polytechnic, we're working on a project funded by the region for second life batteries. That is to say, in the terms of a circular economy, we would use the automotive batteries, used ones, and use them for energy. And then we have several projects with the company SNAM for green hydrogen production that we believe will offer an added value in the Aosta Valley as a completion of the carbon-free fuel project for the region because of the problems of technology and network. To have a decarbonization, that is to say fuel-free, cannot be 100%. As you saw in California, what you would need for the batteries is lithium, and there wouldn't be enough lithium on the whole planet. So we're trying to diversify where it is difficult to electrify. So hard to beat sectors, for example, heavy manufacturing, steel mills, or mobility could be using it. And you also need water for hydrogen, and we have water, but to make hydrogen, to get hydrogen, green hydrogen at sustainable costs, it is useful to have we have to use them for many hours. The photovoltaic plant works at 1,000, 1,500 hours a week. The wind farms 2,000. A hydroelectric plant, if it is of the right size, can work for 8,000, which means that you're reducing the cost of the investment by a fourth, which is why it's interesting. And then we have electric mobility. We have already got 82 charging points, and we expect to get more than 200. In terms of the figures, we will be going from 1.1 gigawatts in 5 years to 1.56 and increasing current targets 3.1 terawatt per hour and moving up to 4. In terms of the environment, this would lead to 900 tons equivalent not being emitted, but also we have the CO2, which is absorbed by about 2,650,000 trees, so environmentally very positive. And now I would like to move on to talk about renewable energies, since we're in a situation where we're talking a lot about renewable energy. I would like to show you a graph which is emblematic and which shows the prices of energy from 2008 to the end of 2021. Volatility of energy costs was important when it reached 15 euros per kilowatt hour. You can see it on the left. After the Lehman Brothers crisis, it had gone up, it had soared, and it had been above 100 euros. In the last month of the 2021, there was an exponential growth, which was an energy shock, the one I was talking about before. That meant that a number of energy companies have gone bankrupt. This is for you to see what happened in the last month. This peak, which came down after Christmas to a degree, it was followed by another one. That is to say, the one due to the war, which we all know, between Russia and the Ukraine. The peak was linked to retriggering or restarting up after the pandemic, a request of gas for countries in the Far East, and therefore an increase between demand and supply, plus the geopolitical tensions that arose, which in the end led to the war. This is the updated graph of the 2022 and the 4 years. Here you can see it, the peak on the day of the war, but you see that prices are frighteningly high. And this means that in the worst year had been 2020, it was 38 euros, but it was 50, 60 euros. Now it's stably above 200 this year, but in the years to come, we're expecting very high prices. What is this due to? Basically, prices of gas. Here are shown for Spain, Germany, France, and Italy what the energy mix is to produce electricity. You see that in Italy, we're very balanced. We tilt towards gas. France has a lot of nuclear, but we have 42% gas, 36% oil, and the rest is renewable. You see that the hydroelectric is still quite important. It's still the majority of the renewables. Unfortunately, one takes it for granted and don't do much. Now, what is necessary? We talk a lot about prices, but the price mechanism is determined as a driver by the most important source, i.e. gas in Italy. If we manage to increase the percentage of renewable gas, we could have a cost which is around 65 euros. Unfortunately, gas demand is still high, and so long as we do this, we will be in this situation. The estimates for elettricità futura, future electricity, if we'd had the percentage of renewable renewable energy that has been foreseen for 2030, in Italy, we would have a much lower price, as you can see, the Green Deal mix for 2030. So we certainly know what we have to do, but unfortunately, this other graph tells us that the 2030 objectives require 70 gigawatt of renewable energy, 8 a year, and that is the lighter blue, but the current trend is 1 gigawatt. So we we probably it will be 2082, 2090 before we attain these targets. So all the various decrees are moving to increase or hasten the pace, but it is important to see how we can implement these objectives, because otherwise they're just statements, declarations of intent, but in the end, CO2 remains where it was and the trend doesn't change. 2 slides now on the impact in the mountain areas. We're cooperating with ARPA and Montagna Sicura, which is a foundation, and CIMA. We've been cooperating since 2006, monitoring the 5 water basins which are upstream of the big dikes, dams of the group, to measure the snow water equivalent, that is to say, the ability of how much water comes to us from snow melting, which is basically the amount of water that we have, which we can then use for drinking water or for farms. Unfortunately, the forecast for the next few years tell us that there will be as much water, but less snow and more water, and it'll be violent. And if there aren't any catchment basins, it'll be a problem, and it's going to cause floods downstream. The snow water equivalent, I mentioned it. I'll just give you a few facts and figures. You see Place Moulin, which is one of our water basins. As compared to 10 years, we have minus 30%, and here we have about 60 million cubic meters of water. You can see in the previous years what the value was, and the graph shows very clearly the black curve is this year's one of the worst of the past 20. Here you can see the trend of the springtime when snow melts.
Beauregard, minus 35%, 60 million cubic meters of water. Black is always below the black line. Chignana, 4.2 million cubic meters, minus 40%, worsening. And it's even worse for the other two. Gabiet, minus 60%, 2.54 million cubic meters. It's low all the time, even when the snow melts. And Goulier, 5.6 million cubic meters of water. And here is the chart. So it's true that there's a certain variability. Every year is different from the other, but that also tells us the need for investing in infrastructures and having a company that invests in local infrastructure. So as a local company that's keen on the community, that wants to invest in hydroelectricity, but potentially in other infrastructures as well, plays a key role. Of course, a company with just, with a sheer business plan would play a completely different role, and such a company would have not approved these projects. The board of directors would have not approved them. And this is about the strategic role of hydroelectricity. It's taken for granted, and it still takes the lion's share of renewable energy sources in Italy, and it's the only source that can be planned thanks to the dams. Therefore, to reach a growth amounting to 70 gigawatts of renewable sources, of course, we must use solar energy as well as wind energy that are not so easy to plan. That means we must strengthen the network. For example, there's now at sunset, there's a ramp of requirement which is compensated for by thermoelectric power plants. Otherwise, there would be a blackout. So it's very important to accumulate energy, I mean, to store energy, and as well as hydroelectric power plants. We have 2-3 plants that are over a century old. That means that they need investments if we want to keep them efficient and if we don't want to have an environmental impact. Unfortunately, part of these concessions have already expired and some of them are about to expire, and that blocks 10 billion investments in Italy. They don't require, I mean, any funds. They could be invested immediately with Italian companies, whereas with the solar and wind systems, we know we must buy the technology either in the States or in the Middle East. So it would be a win-win local operation. And we should also add the strategic value, the strategic role of energy at a moment like this when we're seeking energy autonomy. So if we lose our strategic pillars, we make a very gross mistake. Compagnie, which is the Committee for Safety in Italy, Safety and Security, at the end of 2021, devoted a chapter to the strategic role of hydroelectric power. Let us emphasize that these plants can improve safety through flood laminations, and it also plays an important tourist role. Having said this, we can't understand why concessions cannot be postponed if companies are ready to invest. By the way, Italy had committed a violation of European regulations. The government took stance against that. The competition law will be soon approved, and it covers hydroelectric power plants too. And they even brought forward the dates of tenders. But the most absurd thing is that we're not against competition, but we'd like to have mutuality. There's lack of mutuality in Europe. Italy is the only European country that has tenders for concessions, hydroelectric concessions. In Northern Europe, they are perennial. In Germany, they last for 80 years. In France, I mean, in all the other countries, they are not the object of tenders. And here we can see the duration. No limitations. In Italy, it's 40, but almost all of them have expired. And it's absurd to see that, for example, France, I mean, their concessions have expired, but they just didn't care about Europe, and they postponed them to 2041. Sweden decided to oppose that regulation and postpone them, and the same applies to Portugal and Austria, whereas we still make them the object of tenders. I'm thinking of major oil companies. They need greenwashing to obtain funds from institutional investors. So they need to become greener in a very short time, and they have a lot of money. So Total, and we know how big Total is, much bigger than Eni, has 200 gigawatts of renewable source. If they participate in a tender, they'll have a predatory attitude, I'm afraid, a speculative attitude. So this is unfortunately the current situation, and Let me now close with the following suggestion, which is quite typical of our country, and I'm afraid starting from Monday, we'll find ourselves in this situation. Thank you, everyone.
Grazie Enrico, adesso quello che hai messo
Thank you very much, Enrico.
apparentemente difficile comprensione.
Well, it's hard to understand all that, since it clearly plays a strategic, a key role, and we're talking about climate change, and it's quite clear that a correct water management is paramount from the energy viewpoint, but also to ensure water provision for farming, so the management of watersheds. We'll just think of rainfall that of course has an impact, and there is diverse distribution in different seasons. So it's certainly a safety in terms of storage, but also in terms of managing the valleys. It's certainly a national asset, and why should it be sacrificed this way? I mean, penalized this way? I mean, the Italian government, well, I don't know. Well, of course, I can't, I'm not in Draghi's head nor in the government's mind. I can only report to you what we know. So we have promoted this with, I mean, the interest of hydroelectricity with political parties and so many stakeholders. Apparently, the government played the game of the PNR for some important reforms, first and foremost, liberalization. Unfortunately, compared to when these agreements were made, so many things have changed, and the conditions are there to review these positions. They need to become more autonomous from the energy viewpoint, since, well, because of the war in our continent, as well as local goals and climate change. So hydroelectricity has not been considered key enough to be included in the liberalization. Well, it's very hard to achieve scale economies here, because these are all local interventions, each of them specific. It's not like, you know, a huge wind or offshore wind plant. So we cannot understand, frankly said. Clearly, the issue of liberalization is not an easy one. I'm not an economist. Well, hydroelectricity brings us so many consequences with it. Water management, the mains stability, the grid stability. I'm thinking of the end of the day ramp ups. These are all key issues, and I can't understand how they can be considered just in a market perspective, in a free market perspective. And so a true economic and territorial governance should take account of all this. Well, here are two typical examples. We have holdings in two important power plants together with Terna, take part in the, let's say, balancing of the mains without the need for, let's say, a restart. And our most important power plants in 2003, during the national blackout, were the very first ones to make a restart possible in northern Italy. So it's truly, I mean, it truly plays a a strategic role. Yes, it's a huge issue, not just concerning, just in terms of energy. Maybe we can hear if there are any comments from the room.
Impianti e chiaramente non molto su appunto il discorso di piccoli impianti o piccole integrazioni.
Small power plants and small integrations between the various power sources. Just a few more words on this, and what is your angle? What is your opinion about this? Well, clearly we heard about a large distribution network, and that has a high maintenance cost in relative terms. So I don't know if there's room for other types of sort of, I call them integration plants. Are there any possibilities in that respect? Clearly, there's no time to cover everything, but our slides refer to pilot projects for local companies. Energy transition means decarbonization as well as digitalization and decentralization. So in the past, there were few plants and a large network in the periphery. Now, if you look at the prosumers in the periphery, well, things have changed completely, so there's room for it. The Aosta Valley, our region, is certainly first in Italy in terms of burden sharing. We export energy. We produce 2.8 or almost 3 billion a year in terms of hydroelectricity, and we just consume 900 million locally. Well, this is, let's say, the annual figure. Of course, we can't do without the mains, but there are two valleys, including Cervinia, where they can work well, you know, some of the systems was actually undermined by the snow, and thanks to our own plants, the ski lifts could be put in operation, back in operation. Well, I'm thinking there's much room, but for other sources where the solar systems, a little bit of wind, not so much. However, distributed energy, especially putting solar panels on the roofs, there's room for improvement there, yes, for sure. What happens when water is needed down the valley, downstream for farming or for other purposes? Or, for instance, if you foresee a lot of rain and you need to release less water, how does it work? How is the decision made? At the moment, everything is regulated by concessions in our region. So pursuant to these concessions, there are medium and maximum capacities and the release of the so-called vital outflow based on ecological outflow. And the same applies to hydric requirements. What has happened in the past few years? Well, during the year, there are moments of water shortages, and so there are rules to use, for instance, water, not drinking water, for example. In case of specific issues, it's the competent department in the region that makes a decision. Instead, in case of weather events or harsh events, a decision is made together with the civil protection. So if so we need to decide how, let's say, much water we want to keep in the dam and not release water down to the valley so as to prevent any possible risk. Of course, we have software calculating the transfer from one plant to the other to optimize the systems from the economic and, let's say, functional way. But of course, the safety and security needs must be met, both locally and not only locally. And then, of course, we must take account of economic and financial optimization. Well, some time ago, I heard that in Lombardy and Piedmont, power plants were closed because of water shortage. What about the Aosta Valley? Could that be the case too? Well, luckily, no closing down has been planned. ARPA wants to change the distribution of rainfall, and compared with other regions, we're in a better situation. Well, last year our production was lower, 10–12%, and this year it might even be 15%. Well, that doesn't mean closing down the hydroelectric power plants, and one reason being that they're based on watersheds. And so if there is less snow and more water, if you don't have river basins, you run the risk of losing water when you have a lot of it and not having it when you need it. So this is an important investment to be made, and in Switzerland that's what they're doing. It's not easy to have funds to do it, and an important company like C.V.A, considering long-term investments, it could yes, invest in this kind of things, a kind of combined investment. I think maybe one more question and then.
Yes, I've got to go soon. Well, half an answer was already given by the latest comments you made. I think you have to plan investments. The C.V.A, the water company for the Aosta Valley, has to plan on the basis of existing water basins and catchment areas. So we've seen what the changes are, and we have to look. This morning's data are important in terms of the projections and forecasts. So we've got the power stations, we've got the dams, but we probably need more water basins, and we will not be able to cope with climate changes. There are several types of investments. We can pump. This is something that we could do. In other words, we'd be using two water basins at two different levels to repump water and thus increase the capacity of the basin itself. Smaller basins could also be used for irrigation. Unquestionably, planning such as this needs to be planned over a 10–20-year time horizon. We have ideas, but it's very difficult to plan in the current situation. Thanks for this answer. And hydrogen might be useful, that is to say, produce hydrogen when you need less energy to stock it. This might be a possible form of investment, could it not? In theory, it could. We think it's easier to stock molecules of hydrogen rather than electrons, but if we talk about the ability to transform electrons and then transform them back and stock them, it's very different. You have to link everything to the priorities that you have in this moment I would say that it's not viable. I don't know if you agree. Yes. Several questions in chat. I'll come back in half an hour, but I must meet the head of the department now. Yes, we have to see the round trip and the costs here. It's like the batteries we were talking about. To stock in batteries and then release it, it costs less than prepare a molecule and then release it. It depends what you're using it. We carried out studies on this at the Polytechnic. Batteries are all right when they're medium, small, say for a house, a battery is fine. If you have a neighborhood, then a city, then you have to have an alpine village full of batteries. And although it's more efficient, it's unmanageable, too expensive, too much maintenance, also get rid of it, and disposing of them are a problem. So at that point, I think the chemical molecule is possible. I think in certain situations, there's a lot of curtailment, for instance, that is to say, that they're using the containment instead of using, we should convert it. So there are several points that we could consider. Technically, this is possible. Containment would make it possible not to dissipate forms of energy that would not be used, but on large, I think on large scale, chemical is better than electrochemical. Right. There's still a question, if I'm not mistaken. First of all, congratulations for the results that you've obtained, and thank you very much for what the fallout on the whole of the Val d'Aosta. Since water is so important in this moment, have you also thought about having made an investment, maybe not, but to build new water basins to manage the excess water? That was something I've already mentioned, and that is to say big water basins are very difficult, also because of authorizations. We had suggested one in Cogne, but the local authority had shut us down, to put it mildly. You must also be careful how these water basins must be positioned carefully because they change biodiversity. But having said that, smaller water basins, and in particular water basins linked to irrigation needs, yes, could. But the time for authorization, then the implementation, well, all of that would take us beyond our concession. It makes it very difficult. They would have to give us a longer time horizon for it to make it worth our while. Thank you very much. Please excuse me. I have to leave. There is no sound. There is no sound. Non c'è suono. There is no sound. I'm sorry, we can't hear anything. I'm very sorry, but we're not receiving any sound, and thus I can't translate.
Harder, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes. Hey, yes.
Okay, good.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. Oh, fantastic. We can
I'll
see
do
you.
my- Thank you very much. And good afternoon to you all. I'm sorry I couldn't attend in Italy. I like to go to Italy, but today I'm actually in Lithuania doing some other representation. Do you see
Okay.
my presentation?
Yeah. Yeah, you can put in presentation mode, maybe. Okay.
Now?
Yeah, now it's okay.
Okay, thank you very much. It was interesting to hear about the hydroelectric as well, because that's the main source in Norway. I think we use 95% of all of our electric consumption is by hydroelectric power. But even if we do use hydroelectric power, we have to join the rest of the world to try to manage the new goals by UN and others to meet the climate change. I will give you my short presentation, and of course you will have it later on if you like, and feel free to contact me when it is everything. My small municipality is like yours. It's in the mountain area in one of the big valleys called Gudbrandsdalen. It hosted the Olympic Games in '94 together with Lillehammer. There is one special thing in Norway, maybe compared to other countries, is that in Norway it's a big tradition to own your own small cabin or cottage. In many areas, this is without electricity. It's only fired by wood, and you have to use other like solar and so on. In my municipality, we now house 4,460 cabins. Half of them has come after the Olympic Games and the building of Kvitfjell, and they are as small as 8 square meters to 500 square meters. We also have several hotels and different types of flats for rent and some other resorts. It's a big family tradition when you have your own cabin to spend as much time as possible with your family for Christmas, winter holiday, during Easter, summer, autumn, and in weekends and so on. In these days, we are starting to renew our local plans for development, and we have to use the 17th UN Sustainable Development Goals in all our planning. The municipality also is an owner of 25% of an electric company, which is common in some parts of Norway. Many municipalities are owner of local electricity companies. In Ringebu, there are 2 areas where we host our guests. It's in Vennabygd. It's the east side of the valley. That area is the oldest one, mainly on the plateau of the mountain, and it's cross-country skiing in winter and hiking and so on. I will tell you a little bit later on. The new area where the Olympic was, Kvitfjell, is a ski resort, and it's 2,000 cabins on both sides, and it's more tourist hotels on Kvitfjell than on the Vennabygd, because the Vennabygd is we can't develop so much because of the reindeer living in that mountain area. We have altogether with the summer farming camps and other types, 6,300 cabins in our municipality. And as I told you, on the east side, we have a large mountain area where the wild reindeer is the owner of the landscape, and we have to take care of him, and we are not allowed to develop or to do electric power or whatever in that area. The growth are on the west area where Kvitfjell are, and there are a lot of plans coming from new builders for more hotels, flats, and cabin. There is a big plan going on these days on the east side of the area where the downhill track is, and we are hopefully getting this area ready for development in Christmas time. There is also a temperature difference during winter especially, and summer of course, between the bottom of the valley and up in the mountain. You get early low temperature up in the mountain, and during wintertime it's colder down in the valley. The area for ski resorts is about 800 to 1,000 meter ASL, and it's a little bit safer for climate change, at least for the temperature. So we can easily produce artificial snow, and in the downhill slopes and in the some of the other slopes, we use that as a base soil. Here you can see the area with the valley. We are in the south of Norway. It's a big valley going from Lillehammer up north to Dombås in the top end, and it goes further west, northwest. On the west side, this is on the east side of the country where it's drier climate. And we have on the west side, we are used to have a lot of snow and rain and the mixture of it due to the Gulf Stream. So variation in winter and autumn and spring and summer, it's quite common for Norwegians. It's 55 kilometers to Lillehammer, which is a big city. And then we have another big ski resort called Hafjell, which are 35 kilometers south. And the main builder in Kvitfjell, Alpinco, is the same owner and business developer at Hafjell. We are competing a little bit with Trysil, which is further east, also a very big resort in our area. We have good connections with train and bus, at least 8 times a day, and a newly survey done by all the people living in cabin in the 3 municipalities around Ringebu. They say that they use the cabin 61 days a year, which is a little bit up from earlier days, which was 51. And the 2 main resorts are in the east and the west of the valley. And as I told you, we are not allowed to do any more development on the east side. Kvitfjell is becoming a very popular place to buy and to stay, and the prices are growing year by year. This is this is in Norwegian, but this is from the survey, which tells when do you use your cabin. As you see, 69% is in the weekends, and 48 of those expand the weekend by 1 day, 26 with 2 days. Especially after COVID and the pandemic, people now use their cabin, which are well developed with the shower, electricity, and so on. It's like a standard, same standard as you have in your house. And they use it also for as an office, and then they expand. The survey also tells us that the people who own their own cabin are actually above 50 years, but the new group coming to buy are between 40 and less than 40. So the main owner of a cabin is 50 plus. He has a family and he has child and grandchild, and they use the cabin as often they can. They use it during Winterferien and Easter and in May. And then 80% during summer holiday use their cabin. And in autumn, it's 73%. And for Christmas, 61%. So as you see, there is a lot of use of cabins all year round. The east side is the oldest area, which was built mainly from the mid-60s. And it came along with a winter road from one valley to the next valley. And it opened up for some tourist resorts. And then it also came popular to build your own cabin. This is in wintertime, it's a ski and snow area with cross country. It's no downhill tracks at all. But a lot of people also goes to this area during summer because there's a lot of activities, and there's a lot of tracks to walk, to do mountain hiking. And there are some horse activities and so on. It's very popular to go there all year round. The local resorts, they tend to specialize during the year to do themselves attractive to different kinds of groups. Especially in autumn, it's women who often go 3, 4, 5 on a trip from Oslo or other places. They go up to relax and stay some days in autumn. It's often very fine to beautiful colors. I guess it's the same in Italy, and a very clear view. So many people like to go up there before winter starts. Then it slows down, but in Christmas, the families pack their cars. It's mainly by car you go. And you go up to the mountain area and you stay there for Christmas or for New Year's. And then it's often when the cross-country skiing start. You are so quite far north that we have less daylight, but people went up there anyway. So they want to share this moment with the family and to relax from the rest of their busy days. We also have winter holiday, which are 2 weeks in Norway in end of February and early March, where people tend to go to their cabin to stay there. In Kvitfjell, there are now 14 lifts and 33 different tracks, and it's run by a company called Alpinco. We also have 600 kilometers of cross-country tracks in that area, which are done almost daily. We build around 150 new cabin flats a year, the last 8 years, and it was all high last year with 205, which is quite unique and among the 3 on top in Norway, actually. And as I told you, Alpinco also do the main business runner in Hafjell, which is 3.5 miles further south. The local Alpinco are building flats and hotel beds for rental, and they are building some restaurants and other activities, and they mainly rent it out to private entrepreneurs who will start businesses in their locations. In Venabygd, they are more common to give services and activities for all seasons, but Kvitfjell was mainly a winter place, but now they are learning by Venabygd and try to build up for all year seasons. It's mainly 2 reasons for that. One is it's difficult to get people to work spare time in seasons. You have to develop and make a full-time job all year. That's good for the municipality too, because then we get people who actually move and live in our municipality. They don't just come for season work and go back after 3 months. It's also more common to use the cabin all year. And I will presume that when people get more green, I think they will travel less by plane to maybe to Europe or other places, and maybe use their electric car and do more locally within their cabin or locally in their nation. I think that we will see that in several countries in Europe at least, that young people will probably do more local tourism and less city tourism by plane. From January to Easter, Kvitfjell is full of people from Denmark and Sweden mainly, which come up on Sunday afternoon. They stay 5 days and go back on Saturday. Because in the weekends, there are a lot of Norwegian in the resort, so they have a good mix and it's good prices in the midweek. So in our municipalities, we see some new trends coming. Still, it is popular to build an own cabin and to rent in hotels. But people want to reduce the climate footprint, so we have to be sustainable in all our thinking. We are working with several projects, one called the Green Valley. This is a combined project with the whole Gudbrandsdal Valley. It's 13 municipalities working together to try to find a better way to do a lot of different projects and try to have as low footprint as possible. What we see is that also the people coming from Oslo and the dense area, they are expecting us to deliver more sustainable services. Actually, it's like that we, in this area, which are in 800 to 1,000 meters above sea level, we pump all the water up. Also, the ski resort pump all the water up. You use electric power for that, and we have to see how can we try to get some energy out of this water when it comes down the natural way, because when we are taking care of water and sanitation, it drops all the way down 600, 700, 800 meters to the service where we make it and clean it up. We see also that more people like to have their cabin within the local village, so they can go by train or bus, or we have to do service locally by bus or taxi or something, cheaper and more efficient than today. So when you come by train or bus, you just call upon maybe a digital thing on your iPhone, and there is somebody waiting to bring you up to your cabin. And as I told you, we see a trend that less will travel to Europe, US, and Asia, and use their local country or the cabin more than they did just a few years ago. And we have to give them what we call an activity holiday in combination with resting outdoor. It's a typical Norwegian to be outdoor, to make a small campfire and just to relax and make some coffee or some food together with your family around this fire, especially in winter. In summer, it can be danger with the fire, but then you do other activities. And we have a lot to offer in this country. Also in Norway, we have this special right that you can go wherever you like, as long as you don't make any troubles for a farming. You have the free right to use all nature. Now we have of the same survey of guests visiting Ringebu this year, 30% of them now use electric car to go to their cabin. That's a huge increase, and it's increase year by year. In a year or two, I guess it will be 50%. And we have built a lot of gas stations or electric stations in the south of Norway, and now we are building more in the rest of the country. So now we see people from Europe with electric cars. They go on summer holiday in Norway because it's so easy to fill up with electricity when you need. We are just opening in our plants because in none of our local plants we are has said that it's okay to make some solar energy on your roof or whatever. So now we are opening up in all of our plants, so you can have solar energy and to combine it with other types. In 25% of all the cabins in Ringebu, they are in an area without electricity. They already have small solar energy, using it for mainly for light, and then you use a wooden oven to fire up your cabin during winter time. Windmills was popular, but there's a big discussion in Norway about windmills. but this winter, the prices on energy went up 10 times for a Norwegian. Some will say it went up to European prices, but for us it was very expensive. So now they are talking about allowing windmills again in some areas, but we have to see. I'm not quite sure it will be easy for them to start again, but we are working on windmills out in the sea. It's a government who is working with that. So to the climate change at Ringebu, as you see here, it's quite cold from the middle of November to March. And as we heard earlier today, now and then the jet streams do that. It suddenly gets warm in winter or cold in spring. We can see that as well. Sometimes in January we can have a high temperature, as you can see here, and sometimes in April we can have low temperatures. What we see in the coastal area is an increase of temperature due that in some places when I was young, it was easy to ski and to maybe go on skating, but now it's too warm. But people want to go skiing. It's like a national sport. In Norway, skiing is like football in Italy. So you can understand how we like to ski. So people pack their car and they buy a cabin or go to a ski resort up in a mountain and do skiing there. And now I think some of the trend, which I told you about, is that people buy the cabin because it's less snow next to Oslo or to the fjords and other places. And still Kvitfjell and Endaby is safe with snow and cold temp, but for how long? Probably for many, many years, but we have to react the same way as other has. How to meet the climate change in our district? In this is set from a business view that we have to do activities and try to make all year guests happy, so people can come and live all year and have a good work. We do mark a lot of tracks for walking, for bike, and the new thing now is electrical bikes, different types, and we do tracks for that, and we have a renting company and so on and so on. So a lot of things are coming by electricity to use. We also have a lot of what we call local goals. It's when you come to your cabin, you often have one activity or goal for the day which you want to do, so you can relax afterwards. And we have make a lot of catalog or digital catalogs which people can go and see, and they can make a decision together with the family to decide what are we going to do today. And areas, local areas who has a lot of these goals also are attractive, and people like to come there. It's both places for restaurant, it's places for hiking, it's high up mountain, and so on. It's many different things. And then we have, as I told you, to develop sustainability. We have, together with the guests, to reduce the footprint, both for getting the goals by UN, but also it's expected from the guests that we are green. The guest will look for areas, for resorts which are green and can get approved a stamp that they are green. In Norway, we have a capacity for green energy, especially waterfalls, and it has been many years since we have built out big hydroelectric power plants, but there has been a lot of small ones for the last 15 years. So in our area too, there is a lot of small ones who has been built. The good thing is to combine it, as we have heard earlier, with solar or wind or other things. So the hydro plant can become like a battery. You use it when you have no solar or no wind, you can use the hydroelectric plant. So will Ringebu survive the climate change? Yes, I think so. We are further north, and I think that we can still have a quite good season for winter activities, but we also have some challenges. Some of them are that it became so popular to stay in our area, so we get too many people coming. And too many people, if we don't have good ways of handling it, can damage the nature and give us a big footprint. We can benefit from it as a business because it's less snow and winter in other places. We have a quite stable climate because we're east of the mountains. As I told you, the weather system often comes from west, southwest, and northwest, and it hit the coastal area, and the snow can be very dense there, and the rain too. And there is the main area for hydroelectric power in Norway. But we get less snow this winter, same as some of you other tolls. But in the west area, they get 3 times more. So it has been changed from, it depends on the wind direction from year to year. If it gets more northerly, then we get less snow. But if it's more west and southwest, we get more. So it can from one year to another, it can differs. One of the other key things is that we have seen some years, if we get less snow and cold temperature, the ground gets frozen. And if we then get snow on top, we can have flooding during spring because the water goes on top due to the frozen earth. And in 2011 and 2013, we had big flooding in our area. And that's what we are preparing for in the municipality. We do train for it because it can happen often. Another challenge can be that when energy prices go up and we need to make snow, it can be too expensive, or some can say that we shouldn't make artificial snow. It's not correct. What do we do then? So we have to make, if we have to make snow in the future, we have to make green snow, I guess. We need to have to show people that we are reusing energy, that we are making smart solutions, so it can be okay to produce snow when the natural snow is not so, it doesn't come when you like and when you think, so sometimes you have to make it. And we see that we have now more and better green transportation from the dense area, and people are buying electric cars. So then they are like, it's okay to go to your cabin an extra weekend because you drive green. Here you see a picture of the area. It's the mountain area. And this is a standard winter activity for a family. It's out on ski with the young ones on the ski too, and the youngest one in the sledge. We dream of snow and sun, and to be together several generations. We have quite a lot of well-prepared cross-country tracks, and we pay for it. People who often make what you call like a team, and you pay to the companies who are doing fine tracks for you. We find a good spot, make a campfire with coffee, and everything we are using should be fully electric. We are waiting in, we don't have so much snowmobile or scooter in our area in the south, but in the north they have, and they are all waiting for electrical snowmobiles. Thank you for your attention.
So thank you, Aldar. I can say that the Norwegian dream can be similar to some dream that we have in the Alps as well. So there are some similarities. And just to start from what I've seen from your presentation, you are developing a business case, a business model in which basically the tourism will last for the complete year. So it's not, of course, concentrated only in winter, but it has a vision that cover all along the year. And so this you have also implemented in your business model an increase of digitalization. So as you said, the trucks are digitalized, an increase of renewable production, a better attention to the local transportation, possibly to transform the local transformation more to the electric type of feeding. So there is a strategy all around, of course there is, but I mean all these attention to digitalization and green is the one that the people in Norway ask for. So your business model is also driven by the population. So this is what they ask to you.
Yes, it's mainly driven by the population, and especially now after this winter with the very high prices on energy, they are asking and asking and asking. We try to use, like the S.p.A. spokesman, we try to use the electricity in the cars when they arrive to the cabin. When 50% of them have an electric car, that's a reserve with electricity where you can tap it off when it's a lot of pressure on the electricity system, and during night you can fill up the car again. So this is a type of development which are going on at the moment. How can we use that resource when people are in the Kvitfjell area, and when they come up in the evening they plug their car and they can use power from the car to cook their dinner, and we can refill it during night. That's one of the things. The other things is that people are looking for sustainability, and if you can't prove that you are working along with the UN 17 goals, then I think your business will close down. Maybe not next year or in 2 years, then in 5 or 6 years you won't have a business. It's like all the things that we had done the last 30 years. If you don't follow or do what your customers want, they won't buy with you. So it's even if you like it or not, you have to adapt what people are looking for, especially people with money, because this is a high resort area and they know what they want and they pay for it. So it should be easier than some other places.
So you are implementing some protocol of grid to vehicle, vehicle to grid, and this is also, yeah, it's very modern. Yeah. Oh, I mean,
and solar parks, even in Norway. Yeah, sorry, even in Norway we are discussing the local, which I told you that the municipality owns 25% of electric company, and together with three other neighbors, they have 100% of the company, and they said to the board, please come up with some solar energy. So now we are testing, and it's a quite strange thing because now we have solar panels on both sides. So if you are in an area with snow, you can capture the solar energy which is going back to the sun, going out again. Yeah. So it's a lot of new technology coming, which we attend to see, and to take part in.
Okay, to implement in this way the vehicle to grid and grid to vehicle is a very, very modern way to manage energy, and especially renewable. I mean, congratulations, because it's so at this the level of application I didn't heard before. And well, just then I leave the microphone to the colleagues here. You are still using some fossil for some aspect.
Yeah, mainly for transportation. We still use because 60% of the cars are still fossil, and some of the ship. But we now have ferries. We get more boats, also transportation boats on electricity. It's a very big industry growing up now with electricity, because we have this like 90-95% of our electricity is hydroelectrical. So it's we are not used to use gas or oil or coal for also oil only for transportation.
Yeah. You said the 70% is still fossil, but yeah, is a record in the sense that is here we have much more, of course, than 70%. But Norway is very famous for this, to have a lot of electric cars circulating. And yeah, I know about the ferry, about the application of electrification of ferry, and especially in Norway. I have a colleague which works in Oslo that did works on this in ISA. Did work for electrification of big ferries, which is one of the interesting aspects for future of sustainable transportation. And so, okay, I give the microphone to the auditors here, and if there are some questions, I think it's interesting. Is a business model of different from the Alps, but with a lot of similarity for what we see. I think the question can be done in Italiano. Possiamo parlare in italiano, c'è la traduzione. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Victor Vitale from the Institute of Polar Science of CNR. There is a research agency also cooperating a lot with Norwegians, mainly in Svalbard. We have our station there. So, but you was talking about electrification, so the electricity as a way, and then, but not too much about integration of the sources. Have you any approach from the municipality to help the people? You have a lot of little users, no? People then come with the cabin. So which is the approach to help them or to push them to make a green solution?
Yeah, we have to work a little bit with it, of course, but we are doing maybe a program to see if we can capture some of the energy in the water and sanitation area. You know, they have the cabin up in the hillside. Maybe it's 700 meters down to the station where we clean it up. And during that, even if it is water and sanitation, it's a lot of energy which we could take back. If we sell it to the cabins, or if we charge electrical cars, or if we make artificial snow, whatever we do, we have to see into it. How can we get energy out of anything going back or out to no use? The other thing is, as I told you, because of the high building and the people who bring their electric cars and so on, the electricity company are building these wires, and you have very high peaks where you need a lot of energy for a short time, which is very expensive to build out. And here is the key figure now, together with the local energy company and the people in the cabin, to find out how can we reduce the peaks. One can be to higher the prices. That is if you come at 4 o'clock and you want to plug in your car and to make dinner at the same time, the price is high. But you can also use technology which asks you on the phone, it's a high price. Could you do the car later on? Do you need to use so much for your dinner? So this type of digital helping tools will come in the following years. Mainly, I think because of the very high prices of energy in the south of Norway this year, which really escalate all ideas on how can we do it smarter.
Okay. Thanks. There are other questions from the person here attending. Yeah, we can talk in Italian when there is a translation. So.
Sì, buongiorno. Senta, io volevo chiedere per
Good morning. Good day.
per quanto riguarda
As for
gli impianti di salita, quindi stazioni sciistiche, stanno
ski
controllando
lifts,
l'aumento della stagionalità.
you
Quindi
are
oggi
focusing
abbiamo
on
servizi
making the
dell'utenza.
seasons
Anche
longer.
lì, chiaramente
But
esiste
again,
una strategia dal punto di vista
I wonder,
energetico,
is there an
comunque
energy strategy?
più bisogno di
Because
energia,
lengthening the
da fonte
season means more
idroelettrica,
energy.
menzionato adesso per quanto riguarda
With
il mondo
only
nel caso riguarda della
hydroelectric
mobilità.
power, which
Tutto
includes
questo
also
quindi
private
è
homes
contemplato a
and
livello
cars.
normativo per quanto
I mean,
riguarda
is this
impianti
all
di risalita
governed
di
as
stazioni
well
sciistiche,
when it comes
un
to ski
concetto di
lifts?
anche
Do you
di
have a
produzione o
legal
comunque
framework?
risparmio di energia,
And do you
perché
also
insomma
include
sia
self-production of
sostenibile
energy
insomma
so as to make
ridurre
sure
l'aumento
that
della
everything
stagionalità
is
di
sustainable and to
stazioni
make these
sciistiche?
longer seasons sustainable?
Yeah, I don't think we used the season with the ski lift is almost the same, but it's the other activities in the area with the cabin. Normally when the snow and the winter season is over, the ski lifts close in approximately 20th of April. It's after Easter. They close down and they do maintenance and all the thing. Now and then you can have as a sort of activity, they can do a ski lift for transportation for people up to the mountain or something, but normally not. So mainly in summer, people bring their own bike. You have tracks for people to walk around in the same area where the ski resort is. It's a lot of tracks to just walk around, relax, going around, have some goals which you and your family are reaching. So, and then we say that people who go to their cabin during summer, of course, they use a little bit consumption of power, but during spring, we have a lot of electricity, cheap electricity, because when the snow melt during May, June, July, we can't fill everything in the basin. It went over, so you can just produce so people can use it. So it's difficult to see, but as I told you, when all this is mixed together, people with the cars and everything, I think then the ski lifts and everything can use. If you are in the ski slope, you're not driving your car, so your car can deliver actually energy. So how we can in the future make it possible to don't have all these peaks for power consumption, that will be very interesting to see how we can manage to use different types of energy source to balance it.
Okay, so Alda, I think that we have discussed a good way. I think you give some example, some idea that can be interesting to discuss also here in our communities, especially the vehicle to grid and grid to vehicle is of course one of the topic of interest. For sure in Norway you have more electric car compared to here, so it's possible to be done here. It's less possible, but yeah, it's a model that can be considered also in other application. So thank you again. If you have time, Aldo, you can remain with us. We have other two speakers now. and then we will be some final discussion at the end of the, but I mean, in 1 hour from now, I think, even less. And so we can go to the next speaker. Is from US. I think today is in Colorado or in Utah, but he will say, he will tell us. Tore, I just keep to Italian to present you and to introduce you, and then we will start your presentation. La biografia di
The
Tore
biography of Tore is extremely interesting, I believe. He was grown and raised in Courmayeur in Colorado. He's a mountain man, and you can tell from the pictures he sent us, he loves to ski and he likes mountaineering. The role he has now is being a member of an organization which I believe is extremely interesting on the national scenario. I believe it's very much United States centered, but I believe it is interested in expanding its scope, and they probably have activities in Europe as well. He's going to tell us about protecting our winters. So his presentation has to do with the sustainability of mountain areas and with the fact that mountain areas also generate a very good quality of life and have important economic repercussions as well. I'm sure that he will explain all of this in his presentation. Let me close by saying that he comes from generations of protectors of climate and pioneers, adventurous people. His grandfather on his mother's side participated in the first mission on Mount Everest with a group of United States mountaineers. So he's very much interested in mountain-related issues.
Tore, so thank you, Tore, for joining, and I mean, we are really interested to see your activities.
Hi, thank you so much. Can you hear me okay, Massimo?
Yeah.
And see my slides? Yeah, great. Fantastic. Well, thank you, everyone. My name is Tore Udall. As Massimo said, I am the Chief of Staff for Protect Our Winters POW. I oversee all of our finance and business and people operations, as well as work very closely on our fundraising and partnership managers. I joined the organization just after our federal political elections in November of 2016. I'm sitting down currently in Boulder, Colorado, where our headquarters are. But if I was there, I would be standing very tall. I'm over 2 meters tall, and so hence why I pick a photo of me climbing uphill up this mountain, which is a 4,000 meter peak in my backyard, Castle Peak. Due to my height, my ski descent and ski form is quite ungraceful and embarrassing. So I'll stick to the uphill photo to show any sort of ability that I have. I grew up, I was fortunate enough to grow up in the mountains in Colorado, in a small town called Carbondale, Colorado, which is just 20 minutes down the valley from Aspen, Colorado, and the ski mountains and ski resort industry that have allowed this community and that town to really bloom and grow as the sport of skiing became popular in the United States. In many ways, my personal life has been a journey with climate. For my 30 years alive, we've added 50% of all global emissions since 1990. So for my lifetime, a time that we've known about climate, the emissions have only continued to ramp up. In my youthful brazenness and stubbornness, with my father, who built this amazing house. This is the house I grew up on, and also the photovoltaic solar system that was put in place over 30 years ago that produces the majority of the power for this house, passive solar and hot water heating solar as well. powering this house. I referred to it as a mud hut, despite my father's amazing effort to build that house. And in reflection on my own kind of upbringing, and relevant for this conversation is, that was having solar panels, in the US in the 1990s was a really confusing and kind of countercultural type of act. It didn't make a lot of sense. Why would we go for this kind of more challenging new technology when we had so much energy abundance, so much availability for cheap and fast fossil fuel energy? And it was an interesting experience of feeling kind of ostracized and different than my peers, different than my friends and classmates, in terms of the kind of the fact that my house was built and my upbringing was designed with energy and sustainability and consumption in mind. To fast forward 30 years on the brink of the clean energy revolution that we are a part of. This is my father, who's no longer living, but he spent his career working on energy and sustainability, speaking mostly on renewable energy and kind of peak oil and transition off fossil fuel work. He wrote and spoke for much of his life on this topic, including this article in this magazine, the S.p.A magazine, in 1989. So this is again just kind of a timestamp before I was born. He's articulating, as many of you and many others that we know are articulating, the issue of climate change and what it's going to do to us. And despite that, we continue to ramp up emissions, and we're still chipping away at the big block of this challenge. As you see, he's popping out of a snow cave in the Sierra Nevada mountains in California. One of his favorite things to do was to go for long, kind of Norwegian style light ski tours, where you're not skiing so much up or down, but you're traversing, and it's really kind of connecting with the history of skiing in that way, and connecting with his favorite places. This is a photo of my friend Jeff, also at 4,000 meters. This is in January of 2018 at very high mountain range in Colorado. And you can see with, he's in ski boots walking across this frozen but pretty barren and landscape without much snow. And our founder, as we'll talk about, our organization was founded by a professional snowboarder of all people, an athlete, and someone who had spent his life in the mountains and continues to connect and return to mountain ranges and places around the world. My great uncle, who was in public service and served as the Secretary of Interior for President Kennedy here in the United States, really kind of captured what Jeremy really built into the ethos and was of Protect Our Winters, which is, look, we as outdoor enthusiasts, as people that spend time and cherish the outdoor places, we need to be leaders on this issue, because we, truly, to protect a place, you have to know it, and no better community than the outdoor industry and the scientists and the skiers and the business people who connect with these places to be engaging on the issue of climate. So, POW was born and founded in 2007 to harness that energy. Jeremy emphasized when founding Protect Our Winters that, together we can protect our winters. He noticed a gap in the United States and globally at the time in 2007 that no one was working on the issue on behalf of him, dirtbag snowboarder who his livelihood and personal satisfaction depended on stable climate, depended on protecting these outdoor places. And he knew we needed to bring the business people and the scientists and the academics and the professors and the individuals from all parts of the outdoor space. Normally, we talk a lot about the science of climate for groups, company employees and public demonstration. You all are experts on climate science, so I will spare myself doing a poor kind of Cliff Notes version. But this is the slide we like to show in summary of what's happening to our planet, and really translated, if you will, for outdoor people to kind of really understand the difference of going out on a warm day with a light jacket on versus a down jacket. As the temperatures, you're going to be really uncomfortable, and it's going to cause some serious problems. So forgive me with a little bit of levity and lightness to capture this really serious issue here. And again, for Jeremy and the founding, and for us as an organization and outdoor people, this is not an abstract kind of relationship with climate. It's a direct attack on the economic and community interactions of the work that we do, and that's a significant amount of economic contributions in dollars. So in the United States, the outdoor rec economy adds over $887 billion to the economy annually. That's greater than, as you can see, pharmaceuticals, gasoline and fuels, and just behind our incredible hospital care and system here. Specifically, we studied and set out to analyze the economic impacts of climate on ski and snowboard industries. We were one of the first groups to do this. Is to really look at what happens during both low snowfall years and high snowfall years to the economy, specifically for ski and snowboard industry, both the direct expenditures and indirect expenditures. And what we found is it has billions of dollars worth of economic value. But when we have these increasing number of low snowfall years, we have both job loss and over $1 billion in revenue loss. And if you look at high snowfall years, we're only able to add about 3/4 of, or recoup about 3/4 of that revenue loss. About $887 million US dollars is added during our highest snowfall years. So what we have is an increasing or a decreasing floor during these low snowfall years, and the ceiling for what we can bring in during high snowfall years from the industry is becoming is both insufficient to recoup, and it's becoming lower, as I'll talk about here. We also know from research, not that we've done, that's out in the world, that a 3 degrees Celsius of warming is predicted to result in both a decrease in snowfall and trimming on either end of our seasons. And businesses in general depend on consistency and predictability, and ski resorts are no different. And if they don't, if there's a significant variance like we see here, both in the snowfall during the 4 to 5 months that they need to really bring in the revenues that they've invested from hiring staff, investing in infrastructure, training, housing, if we have a 4 to 5 month revenue window to capture and essentially run a profitable business, any variability both in snowfall and on when that season begins and when that season ends is just curveballs that no matter how much planning you do as a business leader, it really directly impacts your ability to stay as a sustainable business. We know this extends well beyond snow sports into the mountains and trail sports during spring, fall, summer. I live in Utah, in Salt Lake City, where I am normally, and we've analyzed just recently, working with the University of California, Santa Barbara, what happens during wildfire seasons in Utah in terms of the number of visitors that are coming to our national parks in Utah, the 5 of them, and spending money in the restaurants and the hotels, and then visiting and hiking and exploring, leading to that decrease in visitor spending of anywhere from $750,000 to $2.3 million annually. we recognize the impact and the growing population of hikers and the value added by these kind of trail and summer and fall sports. Analysis specifically on wildfire is this coupled relationship, as we know, between decrease the snow, the decrease in snow that we see during poor winters, and how that then feeds into the increased wildfire. And for over a 30-40 year period that was studied, 70% of wildfire burning that happened was in places that had decreased snowfall the winter prior. So we know it's just this really danger kind of doom loop system, where low snowfall years, the economic impact of that leading to a likelihood of more wildfire and longer and more intense burning, thus decreased in revenue and jobs in the summer due to both air quality, direct impact from wildfires, then the soil erosion that comes from the burning, and continued increased heat. We've brought in, despite our name, Protect Our Winters. This, as I've been alluding to, this work is well beyond snow and skiers and snowboarders. We're beginning to work with mountain bikers and fly fishers and fisher people, as well as hunters. And these people, again, the whole experience of the sport and the activity is to really connect with nature and be observing the spaces that you're in. And it's impossible to ignore the impacts of climate. And many of these groups, the more traditionally conservative groups in the United States, are beginning to engage. As you all, in terms of, as you all know and have been talking about today, the energy transformation and the solutions available to address this issue are there. In the United States alone, we have 730 gigawatts of clean energy ready to be deployed. That could put us at 65% clean energy by 2030, just alone in the capacity and the energy we have. But we haven't addressed the transmission, the storage, and we're really built on archaic energy infrastructure that we're working on policy right now to address and to modernize. For us, this is really about how do we bring these solutions to scale now, and in the United States specifically, and I think to a degree, some relevance globally. Why are we not able to get past this? Why are we not able to make this shift on the timetable we have? And for us in the United States, it's due to both sides of the political aisle having kind of in the pockets and having financial motivations from industry that's really keen to keep the status quo and keep things the way they are. And then we have a general apathy and just kind of lack of clarity in terms of how to engage across the broader population. At POW, we really believe that with three things, and POW being core to that, we can shift this. We can tip the scales to that future that we know is out there. First, it's going to require a cultural shift. It's going to require climate being a non-negotiable issue, something that's addressed as a human and an American right to clean energy, clean air, clean water, and a healthy planet. Second, it's going to take then that cultural change to push and hold politicians accountable to demand that they prioritize this as an issue on the time that we have, and really make it a priority. And then third is really investing and continuing to support with subsidies and direct investments on both the technology required to get to this future and the financing needed, the climate finance component of this. We set out to understand, as we've defined our 2024 strategy, just how powerful and how many people exist in the United States that we could be engaging. Our motivation research and study found that there's 50 million people that make up what we refer to as the outdoor state, this group of Americans just in the United States that identify as outdoor participants. They're not as politically progressive across the board as you would think, very diverse across political party and ideology. And they believe that this issue is both needed to be addressed, and they know it's human caused, and they want to know how they can help. They're looking for an opportunity to be involved. Again, together, we really believe that this can be the most influential group working on climate in the United States, and collectively also, one of the most influential groups working on climate globally, if we harness the potential of this shared outdoor love and passion. So how do we go about this? How do we take the potential of that outdoor community and turn that into impact as an organization? So it's four-pronged. First, we really set out to recruit and train professional athletes, scientists, and business leaders on how to speak about climate, how to lobby to their politicians on climate, and how to recruit more people in. This is a PhD student and professional runner, Peyton Thomas, one of these amazing people that come into our orbit, come into our world, who say, I'm an expert in this, I'm also a passionate runner, and I want to be involved. Second, we mobilize them once they're trained to drive policy. So we bring them a really unconventional voice to Washington, D.C., and to meet with politicians. And they bring gold medals, and they bring stories from mountaintops and Everest. And they bring, in this case, Tommy Caldwell speaking to his experience as one of the greatest rock climbers in the United States, why he personally cares about climate. This is a voice these politicians aren't hearing from, and a space that we really fill, a unique kind of moment to say, here's a very non-traditional environmentalist, and I'm urging you, not because of some kind of altruism, but because of my personal concern around my passion and my livelihood and my family and future. Third is we then kind of turn that into public engagement to get to that component of shifting the cultural narrative around climate in the United States. We have nowhere near the pedigree of Nordic skiing as our previous speaker and his community and family, I'm sure, but we had a brief moment where the United States have become a little reputable, specifically on women's cross-country skiing, and we're fortunate for our board member, Jessie Diggins, an Olympic medalist in cross-country skiing, who has hundreds of thousands of people following her on social media, and she's using these moments to connect both her experience at the Olympics with with her social media and with her audience members. And then through that, including with this Olympian Chloe Kim, a two-time Olympic gold medalist, snowboarder, who reaches a young, really impressionable audience, she's validating Protect Our Winners, who's giving her the training, the support. She's doing that on NBC and across media. And collectively, these individuals, just on the Athlete and Creative Alliance, have reached over 16.7 million people globally, well beyond the 250,000 people that follow Protect Our Winners, our organization, directly. But the collective reach of these volunteer athlete ambassadors who say, we want to be a part of this, help us, POW, speak to this issue. How do we talk about the mountains and the energy systems, things that we're not necessarily experts on, but how can we help? And we have the audience who we can bring this to. We've doubled down and moved from asking, can you snowboarder or climber, about mountain bike rider, can you post on social media, or can you stand up on stage after a ski film and make a call to action for a specific campaign? And we've now moved into this issue where these individuals are finding their voice so much that they're producing films that are both ski films and climate films. They're again coupled in a way that is becoming, in some ways, it's going to be inseparable. Like, there will always be a component of climate change baked into any ski film, any outdoor film. And so we've been investing heavily and lots of resources directly into this storytelling and this type of content, again, as a way to both bring people in around that passion and the purpose that they care about. Businesses, have long in the United States and globally, said, let us work on our operational greening, let us work on sustainability, and then maybe we'll join you and we'll speak to our customers about the urgency of climate. And we've asked and pushed them to say, no, flip that or do that in parallel, do both at the same time. Come with us and speak, put a POW logo and a call to action on your beer can, provide a call to action to your employees, speak out in the media, have your CEOs write an op-ed with us, and work on your sustainability, because the two will feed each other. But if you just work on one in isolation, you're not going to build the momentum and really have the impact that we believe you can. We work with over 50 business partners, large and small, as both ski resorts like Aspen Snowmass, but beer companies, as you can see here, and technology companies, and they validate the role that POW has. They don't know often where to start, and we really push this concept of progress over perfection and give them the entry point and the safe space to begin to engaging. This is a plastic product company, Skull Candy, that 2 years ago didn't have a sustainability program, didn't know what their statement on climate was, and now they're winning awards for sustainability and product packaging and supply chain, and they've lobbied with us multiple times. They're speaking out, they're pushing it on social media. Rivian, an electric truck company, is their business model is dependent on these policies that POW believes are needed to address the issue. So we work hand in hand to say, we want this future of clean electric fast trucks to be able to go to these outdoor places, and to get that business to scale, we need these policies to address the core issue. So we work closely with them. And then finally, through our motivation research, we've realized the pairing of scientists and athletes, so the scientist being the trusted expert on the issue and the athlete speaking from personal experience, that combination is really powerful, and one that POW has wielded across the media. Just in the month of February during the Winter Olympics, this past February, we had over 1,700 media hits, reaching billions, a potential reach of billions of people globally, helping connect the dots between the low snowfall year, the impact of climate on the Olympics, and what the athletes are seeing and experiencing, in that competition. So, I'll wrap up. I really believe and honored to be here. Protect Our Winter sits at the intersection of energy and mountains and climate. And we really believe that the outdoor community is additive to the base of the environmental movement. It's a much needed group. And together, we believe we can be the most influential group on climate in the world at a time that we need it most now. And this is going to lead us to a future that is not grim and scary, but potentially it's beautiful and it's clean, and it's allowing us to continue to play, recreate, and connect, find meaning in these outdoor places and mountains that we love so dearly. So thank you. I appreciate, again, the opportunity to zoom in and join you virtually. And I'm happy to take any questions, and I'll turn it back to you, Massimo.
So thank you, Torre. I like a lot of the concept of outdoor nation. I think that you can find many people in the Alps that can join the community. In Norway as well, even more, I think, in Norway, a lot of outdoor activities. And so I think these are a very good example of what is possible to be done in terms of joining forces and making also lobby activity to activate the people, to protect what they love. So in this case, the mountain, the activity, and the type of quality of life that we have in the mountain and in the outdoor activity. Before giving the microphone to the colleagues here, I have a question from my side. there is a lot of importance in the control of the climate change and so on the origin of the climate change. So decarbonization is one of the need that we have to try to reach. You are very aware, I think, that European Union is apparently, well, it is in practice very committed to the target of decarbonization. We are targeting in Europe 0% of CO2 emission in 2050. This is a target. We hope to reach it. We don't know, of course, but apparently this is a commitment. For what concern, what is your point of view from US? The commitment of US from this point of view, and of course I have many friends and many colleagues in US, so I know more or less the situation. But it's important for us in Europe to know your voice about this, especially considering that in US, of course, is a democracy. Fortunately, not like in other situations. So there is a change of course, the federal administration that can change also the situation. We know, of course, what was with Trump. We know what it was with Obama and what is now with Biden. So anyway, what is your feeling of what's happening in US in terms of commitment for the future, in terms of protection of climate?
Yes, great question. Yeah, I mean, we hold that same at the core, a piece of our theory of change. We believe also, at the US and globally, we need to be net zero emissions by 2050 as well. There's pathways, specifically for the United States, as I was mentioning, the innovation that's happening around climate technology and opportunities on infrastructure is there. The potential is there, but as we're seeing literally right now for us, the political will to make those that potential reality is not yet there. So we are working both with Republicans, Democrats, to on a piece of legislation right now that could have is really our moment in time to pass some bipartisan climate legislation, mostly invested around infrastructure, clean vehicles, and our electric vehicles in the United States, because the investment now, obviously, we can't wait for another 4 years or another 2 years to invest due to just how long it's going to take to make this transformation. So we hold that goal really, really closely. And at the state levels, we're seeing a lot of progress from elected officials here in Colorado. We think 2030 is even a potential based on the energy, but to do it across the country, it's going to require some significant legislation that we're working on currently, and optimistic we can get past.
Yeah, because apparently the lobby that you can put in, in action is very big, also economically. So yeah, I think this will be a good push for your administration if you do activity in this sense. And of course, I think Europe will be very supportive for this aspect. And okay, so maybe I can give the microphone to the colleagues here. We can make the question in Italian, of course, and with a translation. So for every type of question, of course, US is one of the reference, the international, for what happens in US can affect other part of the world. So I think it's interesting to have some question for Torre. Yeah. So there is a question from Vito. Yeah.
So, okay, a very nice presentation, very fantastic photo, and congratulations for the effort. So very large community that was engaged in this strong commitment and with the idea to preserve what is. But just to have you some concrete example in which your action was making a difference in some, for example, project for development or something like that, just to give the idea in which way at the end you can operate concretely in the real situation.
Yeah, that's a great question. So twofold and specific to Colorado. One, we worked in the 2018 election to and really drove thousands of voter intentions, voters around our now Governor Polis, who within time, was pushing forward legislation policy to get Colorado to 100% renewable net zero by 2030. We then worked directly to put the voices of many of those athletes I shared earlier that are Colorado specific, as well as Colorado business leaders from the outdoor industry to testify to the Air Quality Control Commission, which is the group nominated to take that policy and actually implement it. And we had to make sure that they had the pressure and the drive. We also worked with in partnership over the last few years with Aspen Ski Company, directly on a local a number of projects, but one that's very interesting and a relevant example for this group is there was a coal-fired power plant, or sorry, a coal plant just down the valley from where I grew up and from where Aspen skiing resorts are. And we, with Aspen Skiing Company, partnered with the coal company and we brought raised the dollars with Aspen Skiing Company to do a methane capture. So to add the methane capture technology right on the plant to ensure none of the methane was released while we continued to transition away from coal, knowing the potency of methane, and thus served as a really truly additive offset and investment from Aspen Skiing Company. We're continuing in Colorado to work on what we have kind of public utility commissions that define the local energy systems and timelines, and have just been pushing a campaign right now in rural Colorado, and that's just one of 6 or 7 states that we really focus on in the United States and have been working on over the last few years, as we really needed, and the opportunity for progress we're at the state level.
Okay, some question? I have one, and I mean, this is a curiosity, Tori. What is your position, the position of Protector Winter concerning artificial snow? This is a curiosity that I have.
No, that's a great question. Yeah, there was a lot of media coverage around artificial snow during the Winter Olympics, due to the majority of the snow at the Winter Olympics being artificial. And we to be honest, we have no problem with artificial snow. It's an adaptation measure that, to keep the business keep the business going. Businesses need to use it. For us, it's more, we try to steer the conversation to the more foundational idea that this is going away no matter what we do with artificial snow or adaptation by 2100. If we don't address this, we need to do vast reductions on carbon emissions, and we need to move as fast as possible to that 2030 target. So we try not to weigh in on too much on the pros and cons of artificial snow. It's clearly, for all intents and purposes, an inferior product. It can be, some of our athletes say from the Olympics, it can be more dangerous due to it being faster and not performing in the same way as natural snow. So obviously we kind of defer to their perspective on that, but again, we want to make sure we're focusing on the bigger problem here, which is not, artificial snow, which is only going to become a true reality if we don't address the carbon reductions.
Yeah, that anyway, that mostly depends on the type of electricity they use. So in case of decarbonized electricity, of course, the rest is water to be managed, not to create problem all around, of course, but it can be sustainable in some way. And also this morning we discussed about a new solution that we have starting in France for the production of artificial snow. A new technology, I mean, which is apparently less consuming in terms in terms of energy and can work also at higher temperatures. So maybe if you're interested, we can we can have a connection.
Yeah, that's great.
To
Yeah, that's great.
put you in contact. And anyways, there is some other question for Torrey. Oh yeah, there is a question here. Yeah.
Buongiorno. Io sentivo,
Good afternoon. I often hear that there are oil lobbies that want to continue perforating in the North Pole. How do you try and fight these people? I know that Republicans want to perforate. What do the others think? And do you do anything to fight against these big lobbies?
Yeah, absolutely. So for us, we really believe in like our building in many ways, this cross-partisan, cross-political party, ski and snow and outdoor lobby. We think, as I was speaking to, like the potential power, collective power of that group can win against those forces and those other lobbies. But you know, historically for us, it's been you know, the fossil fuel oil lobby is 100% focused on slowing down this transition and avoiding any policy that's going to hinder and disrupt their business. Whereas for us, the outdoor industry and snow sports, we have a number of issues that those industries have prioritized, and we haven't united and really focused on this. This goes away if we don't address climate. This is foundational. We need to harness all of our influence and power, and that's where we see our group. It's very aspirational right now. We're wielding and using a fraction of the power that the oil lobby is, and you know, we're going to Washington D.C. a couple times a year, and the oil and gas lobby are in those offices with Republicans and Democrats every single day of the week. So for us, that's really you're addressing the problem at hand. That, you know, we need to really be clear on what we're trying to address and the priority of that. And we really do believe both between the shift in how people are concerned about the issue and thus asking their politicians to do something about it. And then if we can really prove out and show, look, you're not going to get reelected, and you're not going to have the backing of your voters and supporters because you're not on the right side of this issue. You're not prioritizing climate, and you know, millions and millions of these people in your states and in your country want you to be acting on it. So yeah, that's you're summarizing the problem. And historically, the lobby has had a stranglehold on the decision makers in our country.
Okay, so yeah, the movement not to vote, I mean, to be used not to vote, this type of lobby can be a very powerful way in democracy. Yeah, the way in democracy, no other. And I don't know if maybe we are a little, I mean, late in the schedule. Yeah. So Tori, thanks again, but you can remain with us. We have still one speaker. So thank you.
Thank you.
And I can say that I spent part of my life 20 years ago in Colorado when I was part of my training as a scientist. I did in National Renewable Energy Laboratory in Colorado. So I spent one of the best period of my life also when skiing Aspen and Vail. So I like this place, I know very well. And okay, so we skip back to Italian.
We have our last speaker for today on the management of mountains. He's probably one of the greatest experts we have. There are so many things that I could read from his biography. I can maybe just say what he is today. His biography is so long, his CV is so long. Ferruccio Fournier, I think we all know him. He's president of the Aosta Valley Association of Ski Lifts. He's also the president of the Chambre in the Aosta Valley. is secretary of ANEF, but he had many other roles before. He also had political roles. He founded many national associations. And he's also an honorary alpine soldier. Oh, I also was an alpine guide. I've worked especially in the interest of mountains, and I have to say that alpine guides do a lot to protect mountains. It is quite late, so I'll try and be very brief, shorter than what I planned. We were planning on finishing at 5. It is already 5, so I'm sure you will forgive me if I'll be brief. I will start from a story, if you will. It's a story about the community, the municipality where I worked for many years. Aosta is the name of the municipality. And I will tell you about the human community of this place. A human community requires the presence of people in the mountains. After the Second World War, all the economic activities in this area centered around farming and animal farming. Tourism was only limited to summer and did not exist in winter. The situation does not change until the 1960s. Just a slight changes because the community continues to lose people. People continue to emigrate. People look for jobs. So this happens, but the type of tourism pattern doesn't change. In the 1960s, we see the first attempts to build very simple ski infrastructures. This goes on for a while, but we see a lot of demand and a lot of interest from users, especially those who lived nearby, owners. We didn't have many people who owned a second house in our area. The bourgeoisie from Milan, Genoa, and Turin had some homes that they used mainly in the summer. The opportunity to further develop winter tourism continues then in the 70s, when larger infrastructures are built. We had one-seater ski lifts for 300 people. That was in the 60s, but then at the end of the 70s and the beginning of the 80s, we start seeing two-seater ski lifts. It sounds like a long time ago, but it's not. The first one was built in Champoluc and started operating in 1968. This means that we could now have 700 to 800 people that could be taken up to the mountains and also people could now access places which were not accessible before, because ski lift infrastructures can go over and beyond the natural obstacles. So the demand starts to grow further. And this goes hand in hand with the development of construction. This also entails a higher demand of electricity. These are my memories. Just after the war, in homes we had at least 1 or 2 lamps. Public lighting didn't even exist. We had some lamps in front of the churches or the squares. In the morning, someone spoke about good practices. It would be good if we could reduce a little bit of light pollution. That would be good also for the budget of municipalities. Apart from that aside, the turning point happened in the mid-80s. In the mid-80s, we start seeing much more powerful and performing infrastructures much larger ski lifts, which could take up many more people. The presence of tourists multiplies, and luckily we do have electricity available. After the Second World War, we only have a small local power plants which could meet local needs. And I remember that even though it sounds odd, we didn't have electrical appliances. We didn't have that much need for electricity. An electrical line is 8,000 kilowatt is then built. Electricity comes from Treves because in the valleys water was used to produce electricity for factories. Not much was left, and so we had to use the electricity coming from down the valley. This is true for Aosta, but also for the rest of the Alps, but also the Apennines, or wherever you have mountains in France or in Switzerland.
Una linea a 15.000 che viene dalla vicina Val Tournage.
15,000, that was the length of the new cableway. And in addition to this request by skiers, the attention of the owners was devoted to snow because of course it was very expensive to do something about it, and of course I mean a minimum number of visitors and a minimum number of days were needed. And so the cableway owners discovered methodology from very early. Actually, when it snows, obviously the need related to skiing is that to have snow falling early in the month of December. Well, in the past, of course, they waited to open the cableways they waited for the snow to come. And well, I can remember the beginning of the winter season for Milan visitors. They were traditionally coming to Milan. So, I mean, no snow, nothing would happen. Well, I can hardly remember one winter exactly the same as the following one. I can remember 2 meters of snow in front of my house, or or having to wait up to the end of February to get some snow. So the technology and the industry felt the need for snow very keenly, and so they decided to use the technology to make artificial snow. Hence, a greater need for electric power. And the first well-performing systems date back to the 90s. And, for example, 3,400 kilowatts, which work they work overnight, of course, but this requirement is so high that the whole community would suffer. So either the one or the other. So if lights at home are off, that means that the snow-making systems can work, and the opposite way around. And to have more energy, a new line coming again from Val Tournanche is installed. And here you can see that the transition from a rural world to winter tourism that needs a regular, let's say, a scheduling requires more electric power. And the need for more electric power is met, first with a national electricity company and then with the local one, C.V.A. Hence, another need linked to hydroelectric power. Well, a physical connection between Valle d'Aia to Val S.p.A was needed. Each valley had its own electric power. For example, if there was a problem in the Gressoney Valley, the whole system would collapse because they wouldn't have no power. Hence the need, in agreement with the electricity companies, to create inter-valley connections. Inter-valley connections of electric lines so as to be able to transport electric power from one valley to the other. As an aside to what I'm presenting you, consider the impact of this shift from one type of economy to the other. Well, migration is involved because we used to have very few people in our valleys. Young people had left. Hence, a first seasonal migration connected to the building sector. And then, little by little, it became, let's say, a permanent migration flow. On the one hand, migration from Northern Europe, because people who are interested in skiing come together with the actual skiers. There are people coming from Sweden, Denmark, UK, Holland. And instead, there's migration from Albania, Morocco, and Romania for the workers required in the industry. So major changes that had repercussions on the human component. Well, undoubtedly, that meant enrichment for our communities. So, new workers as well as new mindsets, new cultural trends. The encounter the encounter with people with new ideas. Of course, we want these communities to continue to survive, especially at this moment in time with such a high degree of uncertainty. And I'm now coming to snowmaking systems. While they are created and used to have the certainty of opening the ski tracks, because otherwise it would be very difficult to promote and sell the ski resorts. Additionally, there's the need to make artificial snow or to make additional artificial snow. And while ski tracks have remained unchanged in terms of their number, actually the capacity of systems has increased. Why? Because the actual time required has dropped by half. So skiers can spend more time on skiing, on the ski tracks. Or hence the need for additional snow to offer something new. So what is a snow-making system? Well, many of you know it's nothing but compressed air and water. Considering weather changes, and we discovered them 30 years ago, and well, we used to breaks for short periods of time. But I mean, the aim is to have a lot of electricity, a lot of water, and yes, distributed energy. And to do this, and it's not the case for electricity because there's a lot, there are distribution lines, there are connections between and among the valleys, but of course we need to have a lot of water. And as you know, especially water surface, well, there isn't very much in winter. So, in some instances, we signed an agreement with Compagnia Valdostana, delle Acque to use the water in the basins. And the second one is to draw from groundwater. Well, I'm making this consideration because I don't know if it's scientifically viable, but it seems that we have more water reserves underground than in the glaciers. For example, drilling in Champoluc, the groundwater, I mean, there was groundwater down to 43 meters underground. So water is drawn from Champoluc, from Courmayeur, with two disadvantages associated to that. Well, the advantage is that it doesn't impact on any surface water. However, we do draw on water that might be lukewarm, might be 5-7 degrees. So there is the need to create cooling towers. And then it's pumped up in the mountains, and of course further energy is used for that. And once it's high in the mountains, it must be transferred. At Champoluc, there are two intermediate stations, since water will be pumped up to 2,700 kilometers. So pumping, warming up, and then cooling. This is one of the disadvantages. Well, the other option is to create basins up in the mountains, and when snow melts or it rains, water can be stored. And water storage at a high altitude would cost less. The only disadvantage is that water must be moved, otherwise it turns into ice, for example. if it's cold, can no longer be used.
tecnologia rispetto all'inizio oggi ha fatto dei passi notevoli di
Well, the technology
per cercare di
progressed so much. First, to be better able to use compressed air and to get a better yield at zero temperature. So from -4 upwards, or you need certain conditions, for example, no wind and low humidity. These windows, well, you will not find many of them. Some of us know that especially in November, the problem is thermal inversion. There may be a difference from the valley to 2,000 kilometers, you know, a big discrepancy. Well, there, the possibility to make snow in during these windows becomes very real. Well, there are various producers. The amount of air is set. The amount of water is variable according to the temperature. For example, with a system producing 84 cubic meters an hour at -4 degrees utilizes 10 cubic meters of water. At -6, 10.7 cubic meters. At 8 degrees, 24 cubic meters. And going beyond, the curve flattens. So the whole system works. So what is this system all about? It's like an insurance policy. You pay the premium and you hope never to have to use it. So the snowing system, the power installed, etc., well, hopefully will be used as little as possible. The less we use it and the happier, because we spend less money. The advantage. So what is the advantage? Our association entrusted the Department of Hydraulics of Politecnico with the support of S.p.A, the unit credit, etc., to study the impact of water, of withdrawal on the overall resources. The first consideration is not an easy one because it's extremely variable. There are years where water withdrawal is very small. In other cases, we have used all the water we had because there was no snow. Moreover, the temperature was certainly not the best possible one. And therefore, it was quite, let's say, borderline. There are also other considerations of various kinds. For instance, well, if you think of water, well, it's then transformed and returned, well, partly absorbed by the ground and then partly evaporated. It goes back to the previous circle, so it's not a true waste. However, let's use it as best as we can. Of course, the less snow we produce and less we consume, especially at this moment when the problem, the challenge of energy is also related to price. Well, we are studying machines that can measure the thickness of the snow. For example, the guideline would be, well, I need to have 10 centimeter thickness there, and snow production systems are automatic. They don't need man's contribution. Moreover, in summer, of course, provided that there are the authorized local authorizations, the best solutions are found. As I said, we're worried about climate change, and I leave aside the issue of energy costs, electric power costs. That's the most important thing is, of course, to get this energy. Costs are important too. Well, since 30 years, we have been concerned with this. The problem is solved, actually, because unless a catastrophe occurs in the mountains where the temperature never drops below 2, well, in that case, we might go back to the previous economy. However, the problem is us. I mean, since we're part of a wider system, and of course we are just a small chunk of the economic system, but we do represent the mountains, and the mountain community is a small one. It grew thanks to migration, to migrants, also associated to snow-making systems, and so this implies also a protection and enhancement of the community. Before moving to a close, let me hint at my own family. Well, I found a document dating back to 1750, if I got it right, and it was about the sharing of stream water between various owners. So it was distributed over the 24 hours according to the plot of land owned. Well, our predecessors were able to create an, let's say, network of streams, because of course without water there could be no farming, there could be no life. And now at 200, 300 years later, what are we doing? We are using the water in winter. We are creating a distribution network. All the ski tracks have their own snow system now. Why? Because there's different use of the land, different use of resources, water, people, energy produced in an environmental friendly way. We maintain the community. I hope I've been able to stick to a short time. Of course, I could add plenty of information, but I stop here.
Devo dire che sono rimasto
I have to
affascinato.
say that I've been really intrigued by what you've told us. On the one hand, we can see the challenges have always been there, and they've always been overcome. Mountain communities allow for a social development that brings people together. Sometimes we think of mountains as isolated places. It's not the case, quite the opposite. Communities come together. Technological evolution always has social effects and economic effects as well. So the evolution of technology is related to the social and economic system as well. I believe that the challenge of climate change can be overcome. I mean, if I just listen to your words, because you've explained how we've come to this point, step by step, and we've heard from you how problems have always been solved along the way. So it's been really intriguing to listen to you and to listen about how we got to this point. Your development model, what is it aiming at? I mean, we've heard from Norway about more sustainable mobility. The local population is asking for it. It's their demand, and this also has economic benefits. What do you envision? Well, I don't have a crystal ball. It is very difficult to tell. What I can assure you is that something has changed in the approach to the mountains. I started in skiing in '68, so I've seen so many changes. And I think that skiers in the past were not that interested in respecting the environment. They weren't really aware. Over time, we can see that the sport activity has increased, and at the same time, though, I can see much more awareness. Skiers are more careful. You can see it from small gestures. So I think that the approach has changed significantly. Some still say that we should stop with skiing and that we should focus on different activities. I was listening to it before. Like we could go walking in the snow with snowshoes, which wasn't really possible this winter. But others have also thought that ski lifts could be used to access alternative slopes. I think that the demand for services is changing. Skiers don't just want to go up the mountain and say, I've spent the day really well because I've gone down 12 to 15 slopes. So you just go up and down, but infrastructures can be used in a different way. Maybe you could do less, but look around more and just stay up in the mountain for longer. I think that this is something I have seen. The approach has changed. I can see more respect for the environment, more attention for the environment. So skiers don't just look at the tip of the skis anymore, but they look at the surrounding environment as well. Skiing is not just a sport activity anymore, but I think it has become a way to look at nature, enjoy nature. I really appreciate these comments as a skier myself. I think there are many potential questions, although I know it is a bit late, but it's a very interesting discussion. Well, climate change also poses problems related to permafrost, for instance, that is decreasing. How can we combine more presence, more activities in the mountains with the problems that climate change entails? Alpine skiing is, of course, nice to enjoy nature, but it entails other problems. Well, I can give you an answer that you might not expect from someone who represents a business association. I think, well, let's say that the limit of development in my simple idea, needs to be considered to see what its boundaries are, its limits are. A development model can only be brought so far as only, if it brings benefits to the local communities, but you should not go beyond these limits. So it's fine to live well, use resources well, so that local communities can stay in an area, but going beyond these limits would cause problems. Mountains are very fragile. Our territory here in the Aosta Valley, in some cases, has been overexploited. Once you use a territory, you can't do much more. I'm thinking that maybe we've built a bit too much. Luckily, things are changing as well, because we've built a lot. In the 80s, many people wanted a summer house, and construction increased dramatically, and we couldn't keep the pace with this development. So we've invaded our territories with new houses. Now, all these buildings we have are also an opportunity to increase the presence of people here. We have 20,000 beds in hotels, but we have 115,000 holiday homes. We don't even know how many people they can host. So you see, it's a huge number. Our estimate is 120,000 beds in private homes. And these homes are being used for people who come up to the mountains during the week to work, for instance. So we are beginning to see a different trend. Let's use the resources we have. Let's use the buildings we have, but let's stop there. If we don't leave anything to future generations, what are they going to do? So I think that we should use what we have. Let's have a lot of projects. Fair enough, let's think about the future. But at the moment, let's manage well what we have. Once we manage well what we have, we can start thinking about additional things. Apologies, but the person from the audience is not using the microphone, and therefore we cannot translate the question or comment.
Quanto si ha consapevolezza che bisognerà cambiare qualcosa, al di là del problema dello sviluppo degli altri. Questa era.
Ma sta cambiando anche la testa della gente.
The people are changing their mindset. This is something that I have seen, and many have the same feeling. I think that people are changing their mindset. Worries are increasing. I am talking about the majority of people. There are exceptions, of course, but people see the mountains as a common heritage, a common good that needs to be used well. I think that this is something that schools, for instance, should teach children.
I nostri bambini qui in Valle d'Aosta approccia al mondo dello sci.
Schools teach children how to ski. And we have special cards for our children and young people to go skiing. So that's fair enough. Schools in the Aosta Valley help people approach a sport activity, but at the same time, schools should also teach the respect for the environment. This is a key concept, a common good, a common heritage, a commonwealth. If we all share this, we will all care for what we share. I think this is a key concept. It's very important to consider nature around us as a common good. And also, constructions, the existing buildings are a common good. I think that your contribution has been extremely enlightening and important. There are maybe a couple of questions. Yes, good evening. You talked about ski lifts that go up to glaciers. If glaciers disappear in the future, what is the use of ski infrastructures? Do you have any ideas on how these infrastructures can be used in the future when there will be no snow anymore? Well, the answer is quite simple. We should consider our territory as a common good, but it shouldn't be dead, but it should be alive, and communities need to find ways to use their territory depending on the existing situations. I feel free to be very spontaneous because we're at the end of the day. I was a good friend of a monk, a man who'd spent 27 winters in the mountains, and I learned a lot from him. I'm very happy I got the chance to get to know him. And when he would ski, he said, you need to remember that man is at the service of God, but nature is the service of people. You need to be careful that nature is always at the service of mankind. So this is the philosophy. We should use, you know, our common good, our nature, our territory without destroying it. And then, of course, there are changes. I will add one more comment. Of course, a territory is changed if you build ski slopes. For a ski slope to be productive, it needs to be smooth. What did our old people do? They changed the environment. If you look around you in the Aosta Valley, you can see the presence of people. We've built canals. We've made the soil smoother for our slopes. The hand of people is there. The Skyway is not a canal for irrigation, but it is the work of people. And it means that we can use a territory, a place. Some might not like it, but it is also something that is at the service of a community. If we had 3 or 4 skiways, that'd be a different story, of course. In light of what you said before about the needs, the requirements for a snow system to work, you know, you need the right temperature and humidity. Now, in relation to the strategies that exist in the Aosta Valley on the evolution of ski resorts, are there any mathematical models which define and take into account the right planning of new slopes, considering climate change and also considering the requirements to have snow and to create artificial snow with less energy? I know that some countries cross climate data with mathematical models to make sure that investments can be made in some conditions and not anywhere and everywhere. So when you renew a license for a resort, do you use any mathematical models as well? Well, all the slopes in the Aosta Valley, or let's say 95%, have artificial snow systems. When water is available, these plants can produce snow in a very short period of time, even if it hasn't snowed at all. In Champoluc, for instance, the artificial snow plants in Champoluc and Fréchelles have a 6,000 kilowatt of power. This is what I remember. if I'm not mistaken. So the total is about 6,000. Well, these plants are able to use 1,300 cubic meters of water per hour. So 1 cubic meter of water is multiplied, is transformed into about double the volume of snow. The drier the air and the colder it is, the more snow we can produce. So, by the way, these plants have 10 different snow grades. I mean, snow is not just one. They can choose what type of snow they want. Heavier at the beginning of the season, lighter later on, etc. So, as I was saying, in Champoluc, in 80 to 120 hours are enough to cover in snow the entire resort. So let's say that in 10, 12 nights, you can cover the entire resort. The same is true in the Gressoney Valley. Water is taken with a ½ meter diameter pipe. So the snow that we can artificially snow is a lot. Of course, now we have to spend less. The snow that is produced in Champoluc, in the crest area, compared to the snow produced in the fresh air area, is twice as expensive because it comes from the bottom of the valley at a temperature of 6 degrees. And so getting it on site is extremely more expensive. So there we could build some basins to gather and to collect water. The Piedmont region, for instance, signed an agreement with mountain municipalities to do this. It was a far-sighted idea. They've created basins that can have different functions. The scarcity of water in summer means that sometimes cattle need to come down to the valley to drink because there's no water up in the mountains. And so these basins could be useful to this purpose, but even to fight fires. If you've collected water, it's easier for helicopters to fight against wildfires, especially now where we are seeing more and more fires. So the Piedmont region has implemented this project. And I can think of several examples. So we need to identify those technologies that can help us. We don't know what is going to happen in the future, but if we look at the trends we've seen so far, we'll have to produce much more artificial snow, but we need to make savings. We need to find technologies to use less water, to have water basins up in the mountains wherever possible.
I'm sorry, we can't hear.
Per essere breve, prima avevo saltato un passaggio degli anni 60.
Yeah, since I had to be short, I had skipped a milestone in the 60s and 70s. Well, in the 60s and 70s, there was a very special weather event. So rain and snowfall, so a lot of snowfall that would last for a very long time. Well, I'm thinking of the various cableways, well, two at Saint-Denis and many others, Chalon-Saint-Anselme, for instance. And that reflected the local desire to use the snow. The investment for a ski lift is not a huge one. I mean, you needed no snow grooming. The very first snow groomer came only at the end of the 70s. So they were dismantled. And so under a certain altitude, it would be useless. So they dismantled them. And as I said before, let's keep what we have, which means just dropping all you have underneath. And of course, you need to take account of that. In the end, we want to protect our communities. We use our imagination. We leverage the technology. Otherwise, big applause for Ferruccio Fournier. Well, let's say it's 6 o'clock. It's been a very long day from 9 o'clock this morning. Personally, I've learned a lot, and I'm sure you share the same feeling. And from, you know, the colleagues I have talked to, well, we, I mean, we had the opportunity to have a very intensive morning session and to get to practical examples and to some practical solutions from Norway, for instance, that can apply to our area too, or the US. And so here we are, and I'm sure we'll manage to find the appropriate technology solutions and also local solutions. So I suggest to close the conference, and thank you very much.